Ed Connors. Welcome to the show.
I bought Gold's Gym for my share for 15 grand I had saved for it to buy a new BMW. I opened the first Gold's Gym license on June 16th, 1980. Today we have all of these devices to connect with people, to communicate, but we're not communicating. That's how you learn and grow, is to meet people.
You have to be curious, and you have to be disciplined to put in the work. They say that success is, half the success is showing up. How much of your success do you attribute to luck, and how much was talent?
Welcome to the Lee Labrada Show.
Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Lee Labrada Show, the podcast that helps you improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health. I want to thank you as our show is growing fast and becoming very popular thanks to you. So if you're enjoying the show, would you please hit the subscribe button and the like button below now and tell one other person about the show. Now, in today's show, we're going to be talking with a pioneer of the fitness movement in the United States. He's one of 3 former owners of Gold's Gym, which became the largest gym chain in the world for 25 years. Amongst other things, we'll be asking him about the success habits of the athletes and the champions that he has helped over the years. He's the author of a new book called The 3 Muscleteers, which tells the story of the birth of what became to be called the fitness industry in America. Now, I've known this gentleman for a long time. In fact, we met at the original Gold's Gym in Venice, California, over 35 years ago when I was at the peak of my bodybuilding career and competing in the Mr. Olympia. Guys, this is my friend, Ed Connors. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me.
So, Ed, let's go back to the beginning. I want to learn a little bit about your story that we can share this with our viewers. I want to know how you became involved in the gym industry because you're an architect by training.
Right. Correct. It's a bit of a fluke, and it's really, there's a story in there, I think, for your listeners, because to me, today we have all of these devices to connect with people, to communicate, but we're not communicating. I mean, I would tell people, I'm a little bit upset today right now because I missed a Zoom call with somebody because they'd forgotten about it. They were very, very careless. And so it's important to look people in the eye and talk to them. And this all happened, all of this Gold's Gym world, as I told people last week at the award ceremony, because I reached out to Pete Grimkowski when I saw him in a gym in Orlando, and he talked back. It doesn't happen a lot nowadays. But I was on a search for a job as an architect, and I was in Orlando to be interviewed by Disney for their Epcot Center. And I went over to Orange Avenue Gym to see a friend, and there was Pete Grimkowski behind the desk, and he was the biggest guy I'd ever seen up to that point.
He was Mr. World, wasn't he?
He wasn't then. No, he was not Mr. I said, you belong in L.A. to compete. You should be out in L.A. and competing in Joe Weider's Mr. World. And he said, oh, I'd love to, but I have no money, no car, just going through a divorce. I said, well, if I take the job in L.A., I'll get you out there. And I did. And then 4 years later, or several years later, he called me up and said, Ed, Gold's Gym is for sale. Are you interested in being a partner? And I thought I was going to be one of, a dozen different shareholders. And it turned out to be just me and one other person. And so I bought Gold's Gym for my share for 15 grand I had saved for it to buy a new BMW.
That's amazing. And then from there, you went into franchising. Who had the first Gold's Gym franchise?
I opened the first Gold's Gym license at the time in San Francisco. I'd gone to school at UC Berkeley. I knew the city. And on June 16th, 1980, so we're coming up to the 44th anniversary of my opening.
So it wasn't very long after you bought into the partnership that you guys decided to start franchising.
Right.
And yours was the first.
Right.
And then from there, did you guys develop a franchise packet? And how did you go about expanding the Gold's Gyms?
Well, there are 3 things that constitute a franchise. One is a trademark, and one is a second is a fee for that trademark, and the third is a business plan. But we were just starting a whole new industry, so there was no manual. So we were called a license at the time. It wasn't until almost 14 years later that we became a franchise nationally. And then there's a whole another set of rules for that.
So by 2004, Gold's Gym is in 46 states, if memory serves me right.
47 states.
47 states, 26 countries.
Right.
And 704 clubs and over 3 million members. Now, my understanding is that this is a goal that you guys hit and this record stood for over 25 years, 24 years?
Yes, we were, I think for most of the time, we were the largest gym chain in the world. There were other chains that had more corporate-owned stores, but in terms of independent operators.
So let me ask you this. What were some of the challenges that you faced in growing Gold's Gym into this enormous worldwide franchise? What were some of the biggest challenges?
Obviously, I think financing is a big issue for a lot of people. I think I could not have done what I did without the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They were great. It's still a great program, I believe.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. We've used some of that here at Labrada Nutrition ourselves in the nascent years when we were first starting out over 25 years ago. So yeah, it's a great program. Ed, let me ask you this: How has the fitness business changed over the last 20 years since you exited Gold's Gym in 2004?
It's changed dramatically, and I think because of COVID, it's changing even faster.
Okay,
and that's what I write about in my book. Is that for the first 20 years of Gold's Gym, our kind of one gym fits all model works for everybody. Mm-hmm. And then around the year 2000, it began to split apart, where you had higher-end gyms. You had about 5 categories of gyms or fitness facilities. And actually, if I were in the business now or actively involved, I'm still really kind of involved, but if I were to be franchising Gold's Gym right now, I would allow our owners to have maybe 3 levels of gyms in a certain market.
Okay, and what would those 3 levels be?
One would be a low-cost, high-volume gym like Planet
Fitness?
Planet Hollywood, Planet Fitness. And then a middle range, $50 a month or less, and then a high end like Equinox or a Lifetime Fitness.
There's something for everybody.
Yeah.
So the 2020 pandemic changed the gym business in terms of people, let's say, working out more at home, or just the different types of exercise that they were attracted to.
I think it was a combination of things. I think. First off, a number of people learned to train at home. And then there's a group of basically baby boomers who I think are fearful of going back into the gym or the public spaces. Mm-hmm. And that's enough to really upset the market right now. So the gyms are even more occupied by Gen Z and millennials. But that's the gym owners have lost a key component with the baby boomers not coming back in the full volume. So the gyms are in trouble right now, and I think the only reason they're making it is most of them have doubled their rates or more.
Okay. And do you see people working out more with weights now, or doing other types of exercises?
There's a lot of talk about people doing more the free weights and different. I don't know that I really see that. I think that's, I'm confused as to what's going on out there because I don't see it personally.
Right. Ed, let's go back to the early years of Gold's Gym. You had the opportunity of sponsoring many up and coming athletes, wrestlers, sports celebrities, and I recall that many of these people stayed with you at your home as your house guests while they were getting their start. Let's talk about that period in your life.
Well, there was a period when, and people forget about this, I think, is that the Gold Gyms were heavily involved with the NPC and promoting
National Physique
Committee. Were promoting contests. They typically call them Gold's Classic. Mm-hmm. And it was a way of promoting your gym in your local market. And this was bodybuilding's, big bang moment when the NPC broke away from the AAU, and then Gold's Gym started having contests. And so people were winning contests and coming out to LA to get publicity from their show. But
Right.
back then, the magazines were there was no social media.
That's right. It was all magazines,
Right.
wasn't it?
And now someone could become famous from their home,
Right.
or anywhere with their phone. But back then, you had to go to Venice to be photographed and hope to get in one of the magazines.
I remember those times very well in the I would say starting in the early 80s. You did have to go to
Right.
Venice. You had to go to California.
Yeah.
If you wanted to have publicity, you had to have your pictures
Right.
featured in one of the muscle magazines like Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Muscular Development, Iron Man, Muscle Mag, to just list a few. And some of our younger viewers won't know what I'm talking about, but
Right.
these magazines were the analog version of social media. So you had to have your pictures there. And the only way you could ever get your pictures into those magazines were if you took photographs with the photographers, and Gold's Gym was like the epicenter of this.
Well, that's the thing. The magazines typically were kind of cheap. They wouldn't pay for their photographers to travel, and they wouldn't typically pay the athletes for being photographed. So you had to go to LA, which is kind of crazy, but that was a reality. And so I quickly realized that this was a lot of free publicity for Gold's Gym, because if I could, someone like Jay Cutler could stay at my house and get photographed at Gold's Gym wearing our clothing, and it would, if you picked up an average, like a Weider magazine, Flex or Muscle and Fitness, and you skip through it, you put it down, and you ask that person, well, what gym chain do you remember seeing? Oh yeah, Gold's Gym, because we might be in dozens of pages for free. Back then, a full page ad in Weider's magazine cost $35,000 in color one time. And so we were getting all this free publicity thanks to my many house guests.
The athletes were wearing the Gold's Gym gear, the tank tops and whatnot. Who were some of the names that you helped to get started? Because Jay Cutler comes to mind as one.
Right.
But there's been wrestlers. There's been even some movie stars.
Well, in the back of my book, I list the 535 house guests I had.
535 house guests.
And
my goodness,
102 of them were pro bodybuilders. 21 became pro wrestlers. 71 are gym owners, and 25 started supplement companies.
Wow!
So some of your competition, Lee, although you met most of them in the dust, or all of them, I would say, Gerard Dente,
right?
Rich Gaspari,
right? With nice supplement companies,
right? So they all, I mean, that's the thing very impressive to me is people like you or them who, because of what you knew, your passion, you develop your own supplement line. I mean, that to me is amazing. People will look at a lot of bodybuilders, oh yeah, this is a dumb bodybuilder. But I mean, to think about what they've done in creating these supplement companies is mind-boggling, because Gold's Gym, we failed. We never, in our 25 years of ownership, had a successful company.
A supplement company.
A supplement company. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's a difficult business as you know. It's competitive.
Right.
I would say it's as competitive as the gym business.
But I don't think we lacked the passion. We had Neil Spruce was there for a while, and he eventually left and actually did quite well with his company. But if he had stayed, God knows how things might have been different. But it was you need that key individual to really give it some life.
You have to have a drive. You would agree.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this: many of your guests would go on to achieve greatness.
Right.
Some did not.
Yeah.
What would you say were some of the success traits that some of the high achievers had in common? Because you've known a lot of people, and you've had a chance to observe a lot of these guys. What would you say were their success traits?
I think they were very, very determined. They were really focused. I remember when John Cena's high school girlfriend came out to stay with him, and she didn't like Venice. Venice is kind of an acquired taste. You have to be Venetian.
Yes.
And, he sent her home. And I said, John, if you're meant to be married or get married to her, maybe it'll happen in 10 years. Well, 12 years later, they married, but it lasted for less than 2 years.
Right.
Because she didn't understand his drive, his life.
It takes a lot of drive to do that.
He was on a mission. The wrestlers are on the road 25, 26 days a month. if you're a wife, you need to develop a life at home. But so it's sad in a way that people don't understand that I think the most successful marriages I see are what I call weekend marriages, where the couples each have their own life during the week, and then on the weekends they're together. But yeah, it's hard to do. If you want something, you're gonna have a different kind of life, which I'm not saying is a better life, but it's going to be quite different.
So you would say focus is very important.
Focus is very
the selection of the proper partner to support you.
Right.
What are some of the other traits that you see in these high achievers?
I think you have to sacrifice. I mean, I think too many young people nowadays, they want it all right away. The nice house, the nice car, wife, family. I think back then more people were willing to, struggle.
Work at it longer and struggle more.
Right.
And that's where discipline comes in, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to, and that's one of the things that bodybuilding taught me, is the ability to do things repetitively, difficult things, right?
Right.
And exert yourself.
Right.
And those are things that you can take later into business.
I don't know. I would have parents call me and say, and very few parents actually cared or seemed to care. And they would say, I'm worried about my son or daughter. They spend so much time in your gym. And I would say, well, you should be thankful that they have that determination, because if they apply that to anything in life, they're going to be very successful.
That's very well said.
And I think other than maybe some track events or swimming, there's no real other competitive sport that requires so much dedication.
I've always said, Ed, that it is the most difficult sport in the world. And the reason I say that is because it literally is a 24/7 sport.
Yeah.
Not only do you have to train hard, but you have to eat your meals consistently every 3 hours. You have to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
You can't go out with your buddies and drink beer on the weekends if you're going to be good at this.
Yeah.
So it requires a lot of energy. Speaking of energy, so what was the energy like in that Gold's Gym Venice in the 80s? I remember some of that, but I want to hear from you.
That's probably the most common question I get asked. But how do you capture, lightning in a bottle?
Yes.
And part of it was the music. I think people have forgotten about that, is that but back then people didn't have things in their ear. They weren't wearing headsets or earbuds. The music in the gym gave it a lot of energy.
There was a lot of, and you played loud rock music in its heyday.
And I'm old enough to have experienced Studio 54 in New York. And I said, what would it be like to go into Studio 54 with no music? But you go into Gold's Gym Venice, and it was electric.
It was palpable.
Yeah.
Something that really struck me is that, I would go in there back in that era, I would go in there. And, it was like running into half of the lineup from the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
My co-hosts from the day, whether it was Rich Gaspari or Mike Christian and many others, all great athletes. We're still friends to this day. And, but one of the things that jumped out at me also was that there were celebrities in there. I remember Gregory Hines, great guy. There were a number of NFL players like Lyle Alzado, and it seemed like the bodybuilders and the celebrities got along beautifully, and they didn't seem like they didn't feel like a fish out of water.
I think that was one of the wonderful things that people liked, the celebrities, was that they could be just one of the guys or gals in the gym. They weren't bothered, and I think they got a big kick out of someone helping them in their exercise just by chance that, was it some big person? No, it was really, it was magical. Gregory Hines, Jeff Goldblum were two of my favorites to run into at the firehouse and have a meal with. And Gregory died way too early.
He was a fine gentleman.
Yeah. It's an incredible dancer. So no, it was, again, there weren't cell phones either, smartphones. So no one was worried about, people taking pictures.
Yes. Which is almost has become epidemic in the gyms, with the younger people, a lot of times, they're taking selfies, almost to the point where they're distracting the other gym members, and that type of a thing. I remember that there were certain, just gym etiquette, unspoken, things like nowadays, you'll be doing lateral raises in front of a mirror, and you'll have somebody walk right in front of you. It's like I wouldn't dream of doing that. To one of my competitors or anybody. If they were using a mirror, walk in front of the mirror between them and their image. It may seem like a funny thing to say, but to me, it's just respecting the person's space, and not breaking their focus, respecting their focus. So there was a lot of that.
You're right.
A lot of that camaraderie and just that unspoken, gym etiquette.
Right.
I
totally agree.
You saw bodybuilding, the sport of bodybuilding, grow from its nascent years to what it is today.
Right.
But what I think a lot of people don't know is that you were one of the first proponents and promoters of women's bodybuilding.
Right.
Did you not put on one of the first women's
put on the
bodybuilding
first
shows?
Women's
The
bodybuilding?
very first one. What was that called?
Women's bodybuilding.
What was the name of the show?
Gosh, what was it called? It's in my book. I don't remember exactly now, but it was part of. It must have been part of the NPC.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was 1979.
Yeah.
First year we bought the gym, we had the first women's. Lisa Lyons, who died last year, was.
Yes, I remember seeing pictures of her.
Right.
When.
She was a pioneer.
Yeah, she was.
Corey Urson was my first female house guest, and she won Miss Olympia 7 times.
Right. We talked about success factors earlier. I've heard you say that life is half about fate and half about what you do with it.
Right.
Which I find extraordinarily interesting. Let's talk about that.
Well, that's a fascinating subject, and it's kind of a theme in my book. But last week I had 2 chances to speak once to a group of investors, and the next time to the Gold's Gym people. And again, I spoke about that life is, and I've read a lot of biographies, obviously, and writing my own, and all of them seem to agree that life is half about fate or luck, whatever you want to call it, and the other half about persistence or what you do with that chance. And again, if I remember going to John Cena in the parking lot in Gold's Gym after seeing him work out in the gym, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Have you ever thought about professional wrestling?" And he said it would be his dream, but there's no way he could possibly pursue it. And I said, "Well, I could show you how." But nowadays when I do that to young people, usually they just blow me off. They don't.
Right.
They don't take that once in a million chance and to say, well, yeah, let's talk.
Right.
And I see that so much in our society that people are not connecting.
Do you think that people are losing their curiosity? Because if you came up to me, you told me, I can help you. Let me show you how. I would be curious. I would say, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
I think people nowadays, they're more suspect, I guess. They're more, who is this crazy old man? and I think, unfortunately, because of the internet, I thought the internet would actually help, but because of it, maybe because there's more misinformation or hate or whatever, it hasn't helped at all.
There's a lot of noise.
Yeah. The last 2 people I sent for the WWE tryouts, both missed their flights. And it's hard to find somebody, 6'3" and athletic to send them, because but it's a different world, and it's sad, really, because you could change a life just by. I encourage the groups I spoke to last week. Every day reach out to someone. I love talking to my Uber drivers.
Right.
I begin my conversation. 90% of them are probably foreign born. I always begin. Do you know Steve Jobs was the illegitimate son of a Syrian exchange student?
Isn't that something?
And people, oh my God, no. And so I'm giving them hope. I'm talking, and I've made some amazing connections with just Uber drivers.
Right.
Or Lyft.
Right. So I find that fascinating.
So that's how you learn and grow is to meet people. And it just seems to be, it seems to be dead.
Well, and here's a message for those of you that are younger viewers, or those of you that feel like you're stuck. Where you're at, you have to be curious.
Yeah.
You have to be motivated, and you have to be disciplined to put in the work.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're putting in the work in the gym, and you're hitting that iron every day, and you're doing your meals every day, you have the success components to do things that are difficult repetitively.
Right.
That's discipline.
Right.
You can apply that to other parts of your life. They say that success is half the success is showing up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like in the case of the 2 gentlemen that you referred to the Wrestling Federation, but missed their flights.
Yeah.
Man, I would be there 3 hours before my flight.
Right. I would, growing up in Nebraska, that would be my my first.
Yeah, you got to have
yeah.
that desire, you know.
But I mean, again, there's the repetitive nature of the gym, but you've also got to live. You know, these are you're never going to be 25 again or 29. You got to have a life, and
Yes,
almost all the people that I encourage, these 500 plus, they were all under 30 because that's the time to experiment, to try new things.
That's right.
I tell people I was unemployed and broke at 30.
That's
when
right.
I got laid off work as an architect, and that's when I moved to LA and life changed.
That's right. So let me ask you this: if you could go back in time and talk to a 25-year-old Ed Connors, what advice would you give him?
I would be more careful signing leases. But that's about it. I mean, when looking back at my life, I took incredible chances. I did stupid stuff that looks crazy now, but I'm glad I did it all.
But that's risk taking is part of what you have to do in order to get ahead. Yeah. You know, and I think that a lot of times people are afraid to risk because they're afraid of looking bad. Yeah. Or or feeling like they failed in front of their family and their friends. Right. But you got to get that out of your head. Yeah. You know, because if you don't take a chance, to me, you do something, you just get out there and you do it. Right. And if it doesn't work, you can correct course and try again. Exactly. I mean, God knows I've had a lot of those junctures in my life. Right. You know, so let me ask you this: how much of your success do you attribute to luck, and how much was talent? Again, 50-50. 50-50. Yeah. I mean, my talent, my gift as an architect, I think had a huge effect on Gold's Gym. But also even looking at people would always say, "Well, Ed, how did you know Cutler or Cena or whoever is going to be a star? What did you see in them?" But I think part of it's my eye as an architect. Yes. I mean, when I look at so much of architecture in America called building is ugly, and it doesn't. Symmetry is easy. And the body is pretty symmetrical. I'd love to ask our creator about why our heart is off to one side, but other than that, there's a beautiful symmetry in the body. So, when I looked at these bodybuilders, I mean, that's what motivated me to write my book. I started looking back chronologically for the 25-year history. For 23 of those years, I picked the winners, and oftentimes 2 or 3 in that same year. But again, I had the eye, and that's part of my architecture. And you saw a lot of physiques in Gold's Gym. I would imagine that with your eye as an architect, you pretty much, you could size them up pretty quickly. Yeah. You knew which ones had the, right. Yeah. In fact, it's fun now because I would get, later on, I would get videos or pictures sent to me, and I wish I'd kept them a collection. But, now that we have America's Got Talent or American Idol, whatever, and you when you watch that and you think, my God, what microphone are they using to think that they sound great? And I would have the same kind of reaction when people would send me pictures, and I mean, they're crazy, right? But I didn't want to hurt their feelings. But I'm not going to lie to them. I would never tell someone they had talent if I didn't believe it. Of course not. You want to be encouraging, but at the same time, you can't. Got to be, and I think that's what people liked about me. I would never lie to them. I would, I'd say, yeah, you could be Mr. Olympia. Yeah. And I have seen few people that have a passion for helping others like you do. Let me ask you, it's just part of your persona. What drives you to do this? That's kind of my favorite movie is Groundhog Day. Okay. And there's Bill Murray says at one point in the movie, "I'm a god. I'm not the god, but I'm a god." And I realized, I could play God with people's lives, really. I mean, because of what I knew, I could change someone's life. And for the better. For the better. Not in a manipulative way. No. In a helpful way. Yeah. Which we're called to do. Yeah. It didn't always work out great, but I don't blame it. But that person actually had more the Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig. I mean, he died in his 50s, but so did his father and grandfather. But he had one heck of a life. Right. I love the quote, "Some people will die never having lived." That won't be Jim Hellwig. No. And he left a beautiful family and a lot of memory. And he inspired millions, I think. Yes. Just like Cena. And Cena was inspired by him. His biggest inspiration was the Ultimate Warrior, Jay Cutler, and Lee Priest. All 3 of them had been house guests. And if there never been the Ultimate Warrior, there might never be a John Cena. And Cena now is inspiring millions. That's exactly right. It's almost like a ripple effect. I'm fond of using that effect. You know, you throw a pebble into a pond, and those ripples just keep emanating out into the world. You know, and
well, I think it's called a butterfly effect, is a term I've heard. Where, and I told the people last week in the Gold's Gym gathering, if I had never reached out to Pete Gromkowski and he never responded, that whole moment it would never exist. That last week in that hotel, that conference room where we're getting the award, and to go to the Gold's Gym, that would be a different world.
Right.
That's all gone. It's
right. So let's talk about that for a second. Because I see this beautiful trophy that we have right here on the table, and it is a Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award trophy, which you were just awarded just this past weekend.
Right, last Wednesday.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, well deserved.
I'm not much into trophies, but this is a nice one.
That's a significant one, isn't it?
Well, but it's also fairly good looking as an architect. I like it. So
I think it's architecturally sound.
Yeah. I'm very proud of the round logo that we had, the Gold's Gym logo.
Yeah,
that was the first thing I did when I took over the gym, was to clean up the graphics, and you've done a great job with yours. I know.
Thank you. That's a very identifiable logo.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world you see the Gold's Gym logo, it's recognizable. You know, we've been talking about your book sporadically, but I want to encourage you guys to go on Amazon and get yourself a copy of The 3 Muscleteers. That is holding it up right here. And just a great book that talks about bodybuilding and fitness in the 80s. It gives you an incredible historical perspective of the early years of the gym and fitness industry. It's just wonderful.
It's also now on Audible.
It's on Audible.
Right. I record,
great.
And the Audible version is 5,000 words more.
Okay. That's great.
As you just said, the first part of the book is on the fitness of the history of the fitness industry, which is very important for everybody to read, because it's right now kind of like Back to the Future.
Right.
And the second part of the book.
What did you mean by that? Back to the future?
Well, the smaller, personal training gyms are now, I think, viable or are in.
Okay.
It's the big box gyms that are in trouble.
Okay.
Because of what I just said earlier about the millennial or the baby boomers not going back. And the second part of my book is about my house guests. The third part is the evolution of Gold's Gym. And that's what, again, just getting back to the change. Imagine 55 years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger had to go from Graz, Austria to Venice, California to get a workout.
Right.
Now you could, in your magnificent gym.
Thank you. That's a compliment coming from you.
Well,
he's referring to our 5,000 square foot corporate gym here.
So your 5,000 square foot gym is actually bigger than the Gold's Gym that's in Pumping Iron by 800 square feet.
Isn't that something?
And it's bigger, and it's definitely better equipped.
Well, and thank you for that compliment. We have an amazing assortment of machines in the Labrada gym that my son Hunter, who is an Olympian, competes as a pro bodybuilder, helped to select along with myself. But I will tell you this because it just jogged the memory. I have actually trained on some of those early Joe Gold machines, the very ones that you see in the moving pumping iron,
right?
Boy, that just it was just historical.
Well, and the way the cables worked on them was incredible.
They did an amazing job considering they were light years ahead of them.
Yeah. And in my first franchise in San Francisco was all Joe Gold made or designed.
Is it right?
Yeah. So it was. It was incredible. It was, and it was about the same size as the one in Venice. So amazing. But we didn't. I bought the first bikes for a gym, Swin squirrel cage bikes for $350.
Wow!
But there was no cardio in the gym back then.
That's just amazing.
And now, you could equip a gym for $100,000. Nowadays, that would buy 20 treadmills.
Right. And it's come a long way, Ed.
Yeah.
What projects are you currently working on?
I'm working on a new gym concept.
Okay. And what is that called?
No name yet. Well, I've several names. One was Love Life Fitness. Okay. Another was Citadel Fitness. It depends who I'm working with as to what it will be called. But it would be, and basically it's designed for the 80% of Americans that don't work out on a regular basis, or younger people, Gen Z and millennials, where the various components, the cardio, the stretching, yoga, and the strength would all be virtual, but would all be done with virtual trainers, but you would be in a real brick and mortar location. And I think people are lonely and they want community. And I think we need gyms.
Yes.
But we need a different kind of gym for a vast majority of the people. America's obesity problem is not getting
It's out of
better.
hand.
Yeah.
I think the stats say that over 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just crazy. You know, you see all of these weight loss fads and drugs and things, and really what it comes down to is just, you know, old fashioned exercise, burning more calories in, taking in, becoming more active, guys.
Yeah.
That's so important. If you're not already doing it, join a gym. You know, and don't say, I'm going to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds first and then go join the gym. It's not how it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, the gyms are there to help you lose right from the start. So just get in there and work out, and then watch what you eat. You know, I mean, I think that people just, I mean, they just, if it tastes good, they shove it into their mouth. What's up with that? You know, they know more about what to put into a car engine than they know what to put into their bodies.
I'm down to 2 meals a day. I think we eat too much.
We eat too much for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to get down. I was 177 in the Army. I mean, the reason I joined a gym initially was to lose weight. I was 250 and I knew I'd be drafted for Vietnam. So I said, well, I've got to lose some weight. So I joined a gym and watched what I would eat. And ultimately I was 177 in the Army. I remember the number because that was the same number as my parents' address in Omaha.
Is that right?
So it's stuck on 177 South Elmwood Road was their address. So I remembered my weight, and I'm trying to get back down there. I'm 188 right now.
Okay, you still working out?
Yeah. So I'm still, and I do 10 to 20,000 steps a day.
Okay.
And I get 8 hours sleep.
Great.
So yeah, I'm now technically I'm not overweight, but I want to lose another 10.
That's a good goal, and this has been so great. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I've
enjoyed it. Yeah, I hope. I care about young people, and I'm concerned about what I see these days, and I'd like to. In fact, my topic of my book is Dare to Dream. You know,
Dare to Dream.
Right.
I love that. Yeah, I love that, and I think that's something that's needed with our young people. You know, certainly you have been what I like to call a fitness evangelist for decades.
Right.
Decades, you know, and the impact that you have had through the Gold's Gym and throughout the fitness industry. It's amazing. You're one of the titans of the fitness industry.
You. My dad was a surgeon. My brothers are doctors. And I'm kind of appalled at what, how little preventative medicine they get, or healthcare, or fitness. And I think, the average, that's what I think impressed me so much about the early bodybuilders, or even today. They know so much.
Yes.
And that's why the training business took off. I mean, people would say to me, oh, there's no money in bodybuilding, but there are hundreds of thousands of young men and women all over the world training people for a good living.
Right, being personal trainers.
Being personal trainers.
And you mentioned the word preventative medicine.
Right.
To me, exercise falls under the umbrella of preventative medicine.
Yeah.
Because when you stop and think about it, when you are moving, you're exercising, you're moving your blood, it not only affects the way you look, it affects your metabolism. It affects every cell in your body.
Yeah.
And as you already know, the amount of muscle tissue that we carry is, one of those age markers, markers of aging. The more lean muscle tissue we have, the better our metabolism, and the more longevity is what I'm looking for.
Well, maybe we need a medical disclaimer here, but I also would encourage your listeners to give blood.
Okay.
I really believe that's one key to why I think I'm doing better than most of my contemporaries.
So that's working for you.
I've been giving blood my whole life, and women lose blood every month. Men don't.
Right.
And women live longer.
Yeah. And that becomes an issue with men. They don't. They hold too much iron.
Yeah. Exactly.
Depending on their diet.
And so I mean, it's almost like cheap stem cell therapy. Getting your body to reproduce new blood.
It does reproduce new blood.
Yeah.
So out with the old and in with the new.
Right. Well, I grew up.
That's a good idea.
Probably like you. You change the oil in your car yourself, right? You knew how to do that.
Right.
Nowadays, no, but
right.
So it's kind of natural to me that you
can't do anything to cars these days.
Yeah.
It's like you need a computer.
Right. So it seemed like just a natural thing. Well, yeah, you change, your blood like you do. You change the oil in your car.
Yep, that's right. That's a good way of looking at it.
Right.
And this has been fascinating.
Well, thank you.
Your wealth of information. Let me ask you this: where can people find more information about you? In terms of online, and about your book.
Well, if they go to my website, www.edconnors.com.
Okay.
They can send me an email, but it's important that when they send me an email, because if I respond to that email, it'll go back to my website. So they need to give me in their email to me their contact information, their email, and their phone number.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from people. Sure.
Okay. Now, you may be flooded your inbox after this. Is that okay?
I love communicating,
and I know you love helping people. It's just so obvious.
You never know. Maybe.
See, you're
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're an amazing person. Hey guys, help us to grow the Lee Labrada Show by sharing this podcast with just one other person. Would you do it now? And be sure to hit the subscribe button below. Leave your comments and feedback, because that helps me to develop shows for you guys. All right. Stay up, get up, look up. God bless you.
The Lee Labrada Show.
You're moving me, oh Lord. I just